Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season my co-host Kelli and I will be traveling to a galaxy far, far away as Kelli experiences Star Wars for the very first time. And I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody.
For Star Wars Episode VII.
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens.
Is the Force awakened in you? Do you feel awakened?
The Force has awakened in me.
Yay.
Although it's awakened a lot of confusion in me because we didn't get a lot of names in this section.
That is true, but I think that the names are very meaningful.
You have to earn them.
We had a whole section with a name being revealed at one point, and I thought it was very powerful. So I think that's kind of why the names weren't revealed.
Well, you know, before we start with this section of Episode 7, I feel like we need to discuss the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. The lightsaber in the room.
So if you don't know this, we have a Twitter account, and sometimes I think of something and I tweet it.
I think that's important to note that Kelli runs the Twitter. So when you're seeing tweets, it is from Kelli, which I think helps this story.
I cannot be trusted. And the one thing to know is that I don't know anything.
Yeah, that's the point of it.
Sometimes questions pop up, you know, while I'm in the shower or whatever I'm doing. And I think, you know what's a great idea? I should tweet this to everyone. And I tweeted something. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but people were mad.
It was something like how since all the evil people had red lightsabers, you were like, does the manufacturer ever worry when he's sending out a red lightsaber to someone? Does he not think he's evil?
Which is a good question.
Fair question.
That's a fair question. And you know what? I want to go ahead and just blame Leah for this because Leah never told me how lightsabers are manufactured. I'm just imagining some droid guy on Tatooine. He's just building them and he's like, oh, another evil order, and he just sends them out, you know?
Yeah, I guess I never thought to mention it because I did respond to the tweet and I said, fun fact, actually, Jedi make their own lightsabers, but there were some other people that responded and were not as kind to Kelli's mistake.
You know what's crazy is that the majority of those angry tweets came from people who didn't know about our podcast. They just had randomly stumbled across the tweet.
Yeah.
So I made us look bad, but it's okay.
But then we got to talk to a few people and say, actually, if you are interested in our podcast, the whole point is Kelli doesn't know anything.
If you want to really be upset, then just listen to our podcast and hear Kelli's hot takes all day long.
And what's so interesting about Star Wars, and I'm going to compare it very quickly to The Lord of the Rings. Like, The Lord of the Rings is my franchise. Like, I know that franchise in and out, every little detail of it. When it comes to Star Wars, I am definitely an expert when it comes to the original trilogy, but the rest of it, you know, Kelli and I have discussed this, there's so much lore and information about Star Wars that is not in the movies. So if you're just watching the movies, like, why would Kelli know that the lightsabers were made by the Jedi?
That is a point of so much frustration for me because sometimes even during these episodes, you and I will chat and I'll be like, why did XYZ thing happen? And you're like, oh, they don't mention it ever, but I just happen to know that this thing is the reason. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know that?
Yeah.
What, am I supposed to be doing research in between?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing. I can't, if I have a question to myself, like, oh, who's manufacturing the lightsabers? I can't look it up because I don't want to spoil it.
You don't want to spoil anything. I mean, that is definitely a frustration that I have with Star Wars. And because of that, like, especially, I would say the prequel trilogies, there's so much that I don't know about those. I don't even know if I can call myself an expert for the prequel trilogies, but definitely for the original trilogies.
I want to be a Star Wars expert. After we're done with these movies in this season, I am going to take in every little bit of Star Wars information I can.
I love it.
And I want to be the expert.
I love that for you.
I am a Star Wars now.
Star Wars.
You know what I was actually thinking? It's crazy because I feel like I'm not even allowed to call myself a fan yet because I don't know enough about the franchise because I'm like, well, I've only seen 6 movies. But then I'm thinking, you know, people in the 80s were huge Star Wars fans and they had only seen 3 movies.
No offense to Star Wars fans, but I feel like some really diehard fans can be gatekeepers. I've really never understood that of why people feel the need that they need to prove that they know more than somebody else. When somebody likes a franchise that I like, I'm just like, oh my God, welcome to the franchise that I'm obsessed with, you know?
You're the opposite of a gatekeeper in that you try to pressure me into enjoying every single thing that you enjoy.
My gate is always open.
Her gate is not only open, but she's got a forceful vacuum trying to get people in.
Yes.
That was the birth of this podcast, is Leah was frustrated with me.
Because she'd never seen Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
She was like, all right, we're just going to make it a podcast.
So far, so good.
Then you have to enjoy it.
You must like them.
No, I actually have enjoyed everything. Although I will give you a little hot take before we're really digressing, but we haven't even started yet. So whatever.
It's the intro. Cold open.
I like Star Wars a lot better than Lord of the Rings.
I know. You've already said, and it's fine. It is what it is. You know, it is what it is.
I'm sorry. I am a Star Wars.
You're a Star Wars, and I'm a...
You're not a true fan. Let me gatekeep.
I'm not a true fan.
You're not
I don't know
like
enough.
Me. So can you just tell me where the lightsabers come from, please?
They make them themselves. Like, that's part of the training. That's like the final step of the training is making your lightsaber.
You know what would be cool if they showed that in a movie?
Yeah, they don't. Don't expect to see it here either.
Oh, okay, great.
But shall we get into the movie?
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Now that I know all about the lightsabers.
Yeah.
And that actually, it gives me some interesting things to ask you later on in this section.
Ooh, cool.
So we'll put a pin in that.
Nice.
But yeah, so episode 7, The Force Wakes Up. Just kidding.
Good morning.
Could you imagine?
The Force wakes up.
So as usual, we get our opening crawl a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and we are given a lot of information. I have to say, I love these opening crawls. It tells you everything that you need to know, and it also gives you some updates between movies. I do wish that they would say, like, it's been 30 years since the last movie.
Which I think this one has been 30 years since episode 6.
Yeah, I remember you told me.
Yeah. Though I think for, like, actual real life time was way longer, but I could be wrong about that.
Oh, no, I can tell.
Yeah. Someone got old.
Yeah. Okay, so basically we learn that Luke Skywalker has vanished, and in his absence, the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Empire.
Scary.
So basically we find out immediately that the First Order is the new Empire.
Right. It's kind of like everything that happened in episode 6, taking down the Empire, turns out it didn't really matter.
Well, there's always going to be somebody bad.
Oh, yeah.
So I get that.
Balance of
and
the
then
Force.
we also hear that from the support of the Republic, General Leia Organa leads a brave resistance, and she's desperate to find Luke and gain his help in restoring peace and justice to the galaxy.
That was exciting.
So just to confirm really quick, the Rebels, the Republic, and the Resistance are all the same people, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So all the R's are good guys. Okay, cool. And then the last thing we find out is that Leia has sent her most daring pilot, which I assumed immediately was going to be the girl, but it wasn't, on a secret mission to Jakku, where an old ally has discovered a clue to Luke's whereabouts. Okay, and then we cut to some sinister music, some ships flying through space, and we see some stormtroopers, and then we see on the planet of Jakku a little BB-8.
How do you feel about BB-8?
First of all, let me tell you, when I told Ryan last night, I hate Ryan.
Wow. So now this podcast is relationship problems with Kelli and Ryan. Though those were strong words.
I'm so mad at him. You have no idea.
So what did he lie about this time?
When I am done recording this podcast, I am going to go scream. Because first of all, this isn't even the worst of it, but when I was telling him last night that we were going to watch this movie, he was like, oh, you're going to get to meet BB-8. And I was like, who is BB-8? And he was like, oh, it's a little droid. And I was like, have you seen these movies? And he said no. And then I didn't know his name was BB-8, but I watched with subtitles and it said BB-8 chirping or something like that. And I was like, he has seen this movie. But that's not why I'm mad at him. I will tell you why later.
Okay. Ooh, I'm excited, everybody.
In the podcast. Don't worry. I'm not just spewing my relationship issues.
No, these are your relationship issues. If your relationship issues deal with fictional characters in a film and being mad about them, then you have a perfect relationship.
This is our biggest issue in the relationship. It's Ryan pretends that he hasn't seen these nerdy movies. And then I watch them and I'm like, you've been quoting this movie for years.
I love that.
I should say, if any of his friends are listening to this, I am kidding. Please don't tell him I'm mad at him.
Ryan does not
Kind of.
listen to our podcast.
He said he does,
probably
yeah.
does. The same way he hasn't seen Star Wars, he's also never heard our podcast.
No, I've seen his Spotify history, and I know he's listened to a lot of episodes.
Secret fan.
So he's a liar. But anyway, we'll get back to him. So I love BB-8.
Mhm.
I love him.
I love BB-8 too.
He's like R2-D2, but better.
I have to say, I think that BB-8 is probably my favorite droid, with R2 being the second favorite.
What about C-3PO?
C-3PO I like too, but I like them better because they're sassy. So that's why I like them.
Okay.
But I
fair.
always like that in every franchise, there's like a fun little droid friend.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I appreciate that too. So anyway, to actually start the movie, which we still haven't done.
No.
So we start with this old man giving... See, this is where I'm frustrated because I don't know anybody's name. So I just wrote old man giving some guy something in a pouch.
But you know his name now, right?
The guy is Poe.
Poe. So we can call him Poe. That's fine.
Who's the old guy? The way that they made it seem in the movie was that he was supposed to be somebody that the audience instantly recognized and were like, oh my gosh, he's back.
Yeah, so I thought that too, like the first time I saw it, he was going to be like some ally we recognize. I definitely don't recognize him. Maybe he's from a show that I haven't seen, but I don't recognize him.
So you're not really an expert.
I'm not really an
just
expert.
kidding.
Honestly, no. But I'm sure that you assumed that the other guy was said pilot that was mentioned in the crawl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't find his name till later, which again, like I know it's frustrating to not get the names, but I feel like, and I'll talk about it more when we get to the naming section when they do talk about their names, but I feel like there is a very important reason as to why Poe's name was also not revealed until then either.
You might have to tell me the significance of it because I don't think I picked it up. But anyway, so Poe is talking to this old man and the old man says, this will begin to make things right. He hands him something in a pouch, which we later find out. I mean, it's basically like a USB, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a chip thing. And he also says, without the Jedi, there can be no balance in the Force. And Poe is like, the General's been after this for a long time. And the old guy is like, the General? To me, she's royalty.
I love when he said that.
So that's what also made me think like, okay, maybe I should know who this guy is, but I don't.
No, he's like some dude. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong though. Someone's going to come for me for not knowing who he is.
Hey, tweet at us.
Tweet at us, yell at us. We love it.
I'm going to tweet, this guy's a nobody. Nobody knows who he is. And then we'll just see what people
see what
say.
happens. He's never been in any Star Wars movie ever.
Or TV show. So then BB-8 runs in and Poe is like, we've got company, which I love and hate when people do that in movies.
There was another line that you love to hate that happened later.
Yeah, I've got a bad feeling about this. Hate it. So then the two of them run outside. They see the ship coming with the stormtroopers on it. And he says that the old guy has to hide. And then the old guy is like, no, you have to leave. So then Poe starts running away. And people at the camp are not people who are just going to cower and hide.
Oh,
they've got blasters
love
and
it.
they're shooting.
Yeah.
So then Poe gets onto his jet with BB-8, but it gets hit, so I guess he can't use it. He jumps out. There's all this crazy destruction going on between the stormtroopers and the people at this like settlement. And then Poe opens up the pouch that he was given by old guy and he takes out what's basically a futuristic USB. And he's like, here, BB-8, take this. It's safer with you. Get as far away as you can. I promise I'm going to come back for you. Which I don't know why, but that made me really sad because I was like, they're never going to see each other again, which I was right.
Aww.
But I feel like you just can't say I'm coming back for you because then you know you're going to die.
You know it's over, yeah.
And then he starts shooting at stormtroopers. And then I was baffled at this scene. I later found out what was going on, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts as I watched the scene.
I'm very curious because I remember like the first time watching it, I was very engrossed in what was happening. I was like, we're following a stormtrooper? This is wild.
Yeah.
So let's hear your thoughts.
So I wrote that this was a very weird shot.
And I also want to mention to people, because I'm sure someone's going to say, it was in the trailer. I don't watch trailers because they spoil things. So that was revealed in the trailer that we were going to be following a stormtrooper through the films, but I don't watch trailers, so I didn't know that when I first saw this.
I didn't watch the trailer either because I want to be guessing.
I did not want you to watch the trailer.
That would be a terrible idea for the podcast.
Yeah.
No, I go into these with no synopsis, no trailer, no nothing. I just am like, what could this mean?
What's this about? Yeah.
I just figured it out early, it tells me. So yeah, I wrote down it was a weird shot of a stormtrooper dying, and then he, I don't know why it's so funny to me, but he like grabs another stormtrooper's head with his bloody hand.
I just feel like that was something necessary so we knew who we were following. The bloody face guy.
I feel like it's so bad that I'm laughing so hard at a stormtrooper dying, but he just like grabs this guy's head and just smears blood on him for no reason.
You know that behind the scenes they were like, how do we make this stormtrooper stand out from the other ones? And like that was what they came up with.
I wrote, he's acting weird and nervous. This is definitely Boba Fett. Because I was like, how? I'm sorry.
Boba Fett's like at least 60 or 70 by now. And Boba Fett wasn't a stormtrooper. Boba Fett was...
Didn't he die in the second movie?
Also that, potentially he died. And he was a bounty hunter and a Mandalorian, but that means nothing to you.
That means nothing to me, but I'm just thinking like, oh, he's...
I love that you thought it was Boba Fett, though.
Because I'm like thinking like, why does this stormtrooper care so much that this other stormtrooper died? It's probably his dad.
His dad already died. I'm loving this. This is already chaos. We're still in like the first 10 seconds of the film.
I'm so sorry. So then, he's off. He's acting weird and nervous. Then we get this big ship landing in the settlement, and we see that all of the people in the settlement have been captured, including the old guy. And then an evil black hooded man who is named Kylo Ren comes out of the ship, and he's like, look how old you've become, which again feels to me like another hint that we should know who this guy is.
I loved what the guy says when he answers Kylo Ren then, because he says something far worse has happened to you.
A lot of this interaction, I felt like I was like missing a little bit of context, but...
I think you're supposed to be missing context, though. Like, I wouldn't worry too much about like not knowing this guy. There is a lot of information that the characters have at this moment that as an audience, we don't have.
Okay, so Kylo Ren is like, you know what I've come for, and then the old guy is like, I know where you've come from before you called yourself Kylo Ren, and then Kylo's like, the map to Skywalker, I know you found it. And then I wrote down, it's very convenient that Luke just left like a secret map for people to find him.
Yeah, he just like left it. Where did it even come from?
That was really
like, that's
nice
another
of him.
thing too, is like, where did this map just come from?
He's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a little map. I'm going to plant it. I'm going to give it to the good guys, but I'm going to let the bad guys know that it exists so that if they need to, have a little conflict, that's fine.
The setup is a little bit like, leaves a little to be desired.
And then Kylo is like, you got to give the map to the First Order. And there's like a little back and forth. I didn't write down exactly what it was. I'm sure you did because it's probably more important than I realized. But the guy says something like, the First Order rose from the dark side, but you didn't.
This is all foreshadowing. Like, I knew who you were before you were Kylo Ren. Something far worse happened to you. They're the dark side. You are not the dark side. It's all foreshadowing of like, who is Kylo Ren? Where did he come from? And why is he now in charge of the First Order?
And he also says, you can't deny the truth of your family. And I'm just thinking like, whose kid is this? Is this Luke's kid or is this Leia's kid? Because that's going to be my guess.
It's interesting to think about his origin for sure.
So then he says the line about like, you can't deny the truth of your family. And Kylo's like, you're right. And then he pulls out his lightsaber, which actually, well, first of all, it's red. So we know he's evil. And then second of all, his lightsaber kind of looks like a sword.
Yeah.
Like it's got two little sides, which I think is cool. Which brings me back to what I was saying before is a really interesting question because can you fashion your lightsaber to look like a different weapon?
He can because he made it himself and that's how he chose to make it with the 3 blades coming out of it. Oh, it's so cool.
I like it. And then he does kill the old guy.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. old man.
Santeca was his name.
Oh, Santeca. Yeah. Oh, I knew him.
Yeah. I was waiting for the big reveal. Santeca.
That's the one. So then Poe jumps out with his blaster and he shoots Kylo, but then Kylo stops the laser in midair, presumably with the Force, and then freezes him, and then stormtroopers come and grab him and pull him over, and we get a really cool shot of him being pulled away, and you still see the laser in midair next to him. Very cool.
And you could tell Poe is like, I made a mistake. I should not have jumped out.
Yeah.
I love Poe.
No, Poe is hilarious. I hope that he's not dead because I love him.
Yeah, I love how cheeky he is in this moment. And I remember, like, the first time I saw this in theaters, I remember feeling that the movie had, like, way too much comic relief. And I still, in a way, do feel that way. But I do really enjoy when a character gets captured by the bad guys and is totally fearless. And I feel like the comic relief we're getting from Poe here is showing that he does not care. And his life is not more valuable than the resistance. And he is not afraid to die. When he's like, who talks first? You talk first. I like that moment.
Well, I think I've said actually in previous films, specifically when it came to Jar Jar Binks, I was really frustrated and I was saying, saying I kind of don't love comedic relief in movies, I actually loved the amount of comedic relief that we've gotten so far in this section. So it turns out I'm into it. I just don't like annoying people.
It was interesting because in this movie, there isn't really a comic relief character. It's like the main characters are all a little bit like silly and cheeky at times.
Yeah. Everyone's just a little sassy.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I think that's also a product of our generation, because I think like the more we see millennials making content for media, the more you see like these kind of sassy characters coming out and being more regular than what they were.
Yeah. Oh, this totally felt way more modern. It feels like it came from the 2000s.
Yeah, absolutely.
2010s, actually.
So yeah, they have that funny little interaction where Poe's like, who talks first? I talk first, you talk first. Like, who's gonna be the one? And then Kylo's like, the old man gave it to you. And then Poe continues to be sassy, and he's like, I'm sorry, it's hard to understand you with your stuff on. Yeah. And then Kylo is like, search him. And then they pat him down for 0.5 seconds, and they're like, he doesn't have anything on him. What do you mean? It's a tiny little chip. You didn't search his pockets.
Listen, it's a movie. We gotta keep it moving. We gotta keep it going.
So then they bring him onto the ship, and then we see a very evil-looking black stormtrooper named Phasma.
Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yes.
So this is Brienne of Tarth, actually. Gwendolyn Christie.
No way. Wait, I actually wrote down a Game of Thrones reference later.
Did you really?
In this section.
That's funny.
Yeah, but you're gonna die when you hear it.
Oh, I'm excited.
But yeah, so she's like, sir, the villagers? And then Kylo's like, kill them all. And then we see the stormtrooper with the blood on his face, and he doesn't want to kill anybody. And of course, Kylo Ren notices him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, why isn't this guy killing people? But then he walks away, and then that's when I wrote down, this is for sure Boba Fett, which is not.
No, it's not.
And then we also see BB-8 watching in the distance and then running off. And I say running off, but he's like
he wheels.
He's a
yeah,
creature.
He's so cute.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna say run. But I do love him. I love BB-8. He's the best. I didn't think that it was insignificant at the time, but there is a little alien that pops out and watches him run away.
Was it the alien that was trying to steal him later?
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's probably what it was.
So then the ship flies back to the station. Poe is pulled out. Bloodied stormtrooper is looking around nervously. And then he pulls off his mask. And I'm like, that's not Boba Fett.
No.
Very sweaty guy.
Way too young to be Boba Fett.
Again, at this point, I know exactly what, well, I don't know exactly, but I can infer what went on from the rest of the section. But at this point, I was thinking all stormtroopers are clones of Jango Fett. So I was like, this guy's pretending to be a clone.
No,
I know now.
My assumption, based on the information we're getting, is they start to find like foundlings. Foundlings is a term that Mandalorians use. So I don't know if the stormtroopers would call it the same thing, but essentially like orphans or whatever, they raise them from a young age. They don't humanize them. They don't even give them names, and they just train them to kill.
So at this point, Phasma's behind him, and for a brief moment, I was thinking he's about to get killed because he's clearly not a clone. But then Phasma is like, submit your blaster for inspection. And who gave you permission to remove that helmet? And he's like, I'm sorry, Captain. And she's like, report to my division at once. And then he puts his stormtrooper mask back on.
Yeah.
So then we cut to someone we later find out is Rey, but I didn't know who it was.
The girl.
Covered in cloth, looking through ship parts in some abandoned ship. And she comes out of the ship. It was a desert planet, so at this point I thought it was Tatooine. And she drinks the last of her waters. She's sliding down the dunes.
Which, by the way, looked so fun.
It looked so fun.
I have gone dune sledding before, and
you have?
It is so fun.
Where?
Yes, I have. In Peru.
Oh.
It was so fun, but you're finding sand in all your crevices for days.
Well, she's pretty wrapped up. She looks like a little mummy.
Yeah.
But anyway, she puts all of her found parts in this very weird looking motorcycle, which honestly, I get it, but also I think if this were like a futuristic world, they would have a more sleek looking vehicle, but it's fine.
Well, she's also pretty poor.
True. That's very true.
She has like no money.
So then she gets into town. She starts dragging her stuff over. She's cleaning it with an old woman, and she's like looking at this old woman, and then an alien or droid yells at her. She gets back to work. And at this point, I was thinking she was a slave, which I'm still not clear on.
Not that she's a slave, but this is how she makes her living, like cleaning parts, selling parts.
Okay. And then this is the point where I am reconsidering my relationship because she goes up to this RV. I didn't write down the guy's name until the end, the alien guy.
Yeah, I didn't write down his name ever.
Oh, okay.
They say it at some point because she says like, oh, I stole the ship from, but I did not write down his name.
I wrote it down. We'll get to it at some point. But she presents him the parts, and he's like, oh, these parts are worth 1/4 portion.
Oh, tell me Ryan says that all the time.
Ryan says it all the time.
That is so niche.
That's
what?
so niche.
movies.
All the time. Anytime I'm like,
of all things to
well, like if
quote.
he's serving me dinner and I'm like, oh, just like a little bit more, he'll be like 1/4 portion. And I'm like, is this from Harry Potter? Like, what is this reference?
And he's doing like the accent and everything.
He does it with the accent. And I don't know what to do. I'm going to go out there and start screaming.
Oh my gosh. Ryan is such a liar.
At this point, I did pause the movie and texted Leah and said, all I have to say about this movie is that Ryan is an effing liar.
She did, and I was so excited to find out why.
I'm so mad.
Why is Ryan so afraid of being a Star Wars? I don't understand.
I think he must secretly be obsessed with this franchise. I don't know.
He must be. You're gonna like open the closet in his office and like all this Star Wars merch is just gonna fall and he's gonna be like, you weren't supposed to see that.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, he gives her something. I mean, it ends up being food,
like
but I'm like, what is this?
Jelly, yeah. Gross food.
And then she takes it, walks away. She's annoyed. And then we get a shot of the sun. And I was like, oh, we're not on Tatooine. There's only one sun.
There's only one sun. We're actually, well, you know where we are. We're on Jakku.
Yeah, we're on Jakku. So then she goes back to wherever she lives, which looks like another abandoned ship. And she adds a tally to a giant, giant wall of tallies. And then she makes the food out of whatever that powder jelly stuff is that he gave her. And then I noticed that she puts on a helmet at one point and it does have the Rebel Alliance logo on it.
It does. There was actually another Easter egg in this shot as well when they zoomed out to what she was sitting against, the big metal thing that she's living in.
Do tell.
It was a dead AT-AT.
Oh, was it? Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. There are a ton of little Easter eggs like that all throughout it. But yeah, that was an old Rebel helmet and then the dead AT-AT was there as well.
So then she hears BB-8 in the distance and she grabs her staff and she runs over and some alien guy has captured BB-8, but she starts yelling at him and they're going back and forth. She saves BB and then the alien guy gets annoyed and he just leaves. And then she starts talking. Was not expecting her to have a British accent at all.
Yeah.
So then BB-8 is like chirping madly and she shushes him and she's like, that's just Tito. He wants you for parts. He has no respect for anyone. And at this point, I thought that Tito was going to be somebody important. So I wrote down all that detail, but it turns out he's not important.
He's not important at all. But I do love what Rey says. He has no respect for anyone. There definitely is a different level of respect that droids get in this movie, more than we've seen before. And obviously there are some people that are still disrespectful to droids. But my thought has to be that with the fall of the Empire, there were new laws put in place giving
100%.
Droids rights that they didn't have before.
No, I can totally see it.
Which we love to see.
And especially because I feel like Rey is going out of her way to be respectful to BB-8 throughout this section.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So then she notices that his antenna is bent. She pops it off to fix it. She asks him where he's from. He says that it's classified, which is hilarious. And
Cute.
I am impressed that she can understand his beeps. Is that just something like everybody knows how to speak droid beeps?
Yeah, it's kind of something in this world is like it seems like everyone can understand everyone for the most part. Not like everyone, but you know, they all speak the beep language.
They're multilingual here.
Yeah.
But you know who's the most impressive about it is still Han Solo, because he can speak any language. Or he doesn't speak it. He speaks English, but he hears every language and just knows what it is. So then she is like, all right, whatever. It doesn't matter where you're from. This is the direction of town. Don't go into that area. There's quicksand. Whatever. Good luck. And then she starts walking away and he starts following her and she's like, don't follow me. Town is that way. And then he gets sad. And then she's like, all right, you can come, but in the morning you gotta go. So then, meanwhile, at the station, we see that the pilot, Poe, appears to be being tortured. And Kylo Ren refers to him as the best pilot in the Resistance. And he says he's impressed that nobody's been able to torture information out of him. And Poe is like, well, maybe you need to come up with another plan or something like that. I didn't write down exactly what he said, but he was being sassy.
Yeah, still being sassy.
And then Kylo starts knocking him around with the Force and he starts asking him questions. And Poe is like, the Resistance will not be intimidated by you. But then Kylo tortures him somehow even worse, and then he starts screaming. So he was really struggling. And then Kylo comes out a second later and he's like, it's in a BB droid. And then this guy who ends up being General Hux, but I wrote down Hans from Frozen, is like, well, if it's on Jakku, then we'll soon have it. Doesn't he look? Have you seen Frozen?
I've seen the first Frozen. I have to look up what that character looks like. That's funny. But General Hux, yep, that's his name.
Yeah, no, I didn't get that until later, but I'm just gonna say it. So meanwhile, Rey is dropping off BB-8 in town and she's like, don't worry, he'll show up, whoever you're waiting for. We get this great exposition because she's like,
Yeah.
but I get it. I'm waiting for someone too. My family. They're going to be back one day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such exposition.
And then she brings him over to the RV guy with some more parts, I guess, that she had. And he says her parts are worth 1/2 portion. And then he's like, well, what about the droid? And then she's like, what about him? And he's like, I'll pay for him 60 portions. And then he drops a bunch of portions. And she gets hyped for a second and starts grabbing for them. And then she's like, oh, actually, the droid's not for sale. And then she walks off.
I can't even believe she considered it. This isn't yours. This doesn't belong to you.
Yeah, but she's hungry.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Could have fed her for a long time.
Yeah, 60 portions. She's out here eating a quarter portion. But anyway, so then RV guy grabs a walkie-talkie and he's like, follow that girl, get that droid. So then meanwhile, back to Poe, one stormtrooper takes him and guides him. And at this point, it's that guy who's the questionable stormtrooper. And he's like, listen carefully, I can get you out of here. And Poe's like, what? And then he takes off his mask and he's like, this is a rescue. I'm helping you escape. Can you fly a TIE fighter? And Poe is like, are you in the Resistance? And the guy's like, what? No, I'm just trying to help you escape.
I'm just trying to be a good guy. I want to do the right thing.
And yeah, so he's like, why are you helping me? And then stormtrooper guy, whose name we'll call him Finn later, is like, because it's the right thing to do. And then he's like, you need a pilot. And Finn's like, yeah, I need a pilot. And they're like, all right, let's go. So then he puts his mask back on. He pretends that Poe is a prisoner and he's like, stay calm, everything's fine. And Poe's like, I am calm. And he's like, no, I'm talking to myself right now, which I can relate.
Yeah.
So then they get into a TIE fighter and the stormtrooper is immediately overwhelmed with how to shoot because Poe is like, oh, it's similar to a blaster, just do this, and that. And he's like, So then they start to fly off, but the fighter is still attached to the port.
Yeah.
And people immediately realize what's happening and they start shooting at them. They're shooting back. They manage to escape, but they're still like next to the ship and there's cannons. And then Poe is like, we need to shoot the cannons. And Finn ends up shooting one of the cannons. They're super hyped. And then Poe is like, what's your name? And the stormtrooper's like, oh, I'm FN 2187. And the pilot's like, I'm not going to call you that. FN, I'm just going to call you Finn. And then he says his name is Poe. And I wrote down his last name too, but I autocorrect changed it to Cannon, which doesn't sound right.
Poe Cannon, that's not right. But the last name is why I think the name was so important of us not really getting the characters' names like right away because Finn didn't have a name and Poe has a last name. Poe has a family. Poe has somewhere he came from. Poe Dameron. And Finn is just Finn. Rey is just Rey, you know? Like they're sort of like nobodies in this world. Because in the other films, it's Luke Skywalker, it's Han Solo. Like when they announce themselves, they say their full name. And so I do think there is some significance to like characters in these films not having last names and kind of like coming from nowhere.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. But I will say as a person who's trying to write notes on the movie as it happens, guy one, guy two, stormtrooper guy, pilot guy, kind of annoying.
Yeah.
So then meanwhile, we cut back to General Hux talking to Kylo Ren and he says that the pilot got away and a stormtrooper helped, but we're going to figure out who it is. And then Kylo's like, oh, it was FN 2187.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, how would you know that?
The Force.
Oh, okay. Because he was like, yeah, I saw him. You saw some guy in the distance and you were like, oh, that's definitely 2187.
Well, because when he talks to Phasma later, because Finn got written up. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. I'm just a doofus.
And the Force.
So then meanwhile, back to the fighter jet. There's more cannons firing at them, but they are getting away. And Finn is like, where are we going? And Poe's like, oh, we got to get back to Jakku. And Finn is like, we're definitely not doing that. That's a bad plan. And Poe's like, I need my droid. He's a BB unit. He's orange and white. He's one of a kind. And Finn is like, I don't care what color he is. We're not going that. No droid is that important.
Yeah, we need to get out of here.
And then Poe is like, oh, but this BB actually happens to have a map to Luke Skywalker. And Finn is like, WTF? And then they get shot and I guess their jet gets disabled.
Also, can I mention here, little BB-8 gets asked, where are you from? And BB says, it's classified. Poe is just like with this dude who's a stormtrooper, by the way, and he's just telling him all this information.
Although to be fair, Finn is clearly risking his life to get away from them. True. There's got to be something else going on.
I feel that.
So then, like you said, Phasma is reporting that FN 2187 was sent for reconditioning and it was his first offense. And then someone in the command center says that the fighter has been shot and it's set to crash in Jakku in the he goes on Badlands. Doesn't really matter the name of it. All that matters is quicksand. So meanwhile, Finn has crash landed. He's looking around. He's super confused. He sees some smoke in the distance and he runs for it. And it is the destroyed fighter and it's on fire. And he doesn't see Poe in there. He thinks he does, but he pulls out a jacket. And at this point, I wasn't 100% sure if he actually physically saw Poe and accidentally like pulled his jacket off of him or if he just saw the jacket.
I think he just saw the jacket.
So he pulls the jacket and then the ship starts sinking into the quicksand and then it blows up. So I wrote down, I guess Poe is dead, which I hope he's not, but I think he is.
I loved the face that Finn made here too, just like as an actor. John Boyega is his name. There were so many layers to it when he like looked at it explode because this guy helped him. Now he's gone and now he's literally just like a dude on a planet who doesn't know how to like be a normal person because he's been in captivity his whole life.
Yeah, and we'll actually see some great examples of how he is not acting like a normal person.
Yeah, later on.
So first of all, he starts walking through the desert and he is just shedding his stormtrooper outfit, and I get it for the film purposes and I think it's a cool like symbolism situation.
But he's leaving a trail.
However, he's leaving a huge trail.
Yeah.
And then he puts on Poe's jacket. He sees something in the distance. He walks towards it. It's the town. So then we cut back really quick to General Hux. He's arguing with Kylo Ren. And at this point, we realize that the stormtroopers are not clones, but the general says that his men are exceptionally trained and programmed from birth. Yeah. Although Kylo's saying, like, maybe you should have had a clone army.
Yeah. A name was mentioned here, which I'm not sure if you picked up on.
Yeah, Leader Snoke.
Yeah, said to get the droid. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Kylo is like, oh, they should have no problem capturing the droid unharmed. And then Hux is like, careful, Ren, that your personal interests not interfere with Leader Snoke. I don't know what it means, but I wrote it down.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure you heard Snoke's name.
And then Kylo says, I want that map. For your sake, I suggest you get it. And I was really interested by this back and forth because I was under the impression that Kylo Ren was basically like the Darth Vader of this trilogy, but it seems like he is an equal to General Hux because General Hux is really talking back.
I was thinking that he was probably similar to Vader as well, and then Snoke was the Emperor, but maybe it's not like this supreme rule that Vader had over the people the way that, you know, maybe it's just a different sort of...
Kylo's still young. I know who the actor is, so I know what he looks like, which I want to talk about at the end of this episode, whether or not you think he's attractive. We'll talk about that.
My old roommate, if you're listening, get ready for this conversation because I know you are going to love it. She's obsessed with the actor and she listens to our podcast, so.
There you go. So anyway, we'll get to that later. But we do cut back to Finn. He is running through town. He is begging for water and nobody's helping him because everyone sucks.
Yeah.
And then he sees this like rhino pig thing drinking water and he runs over, he starts drinking it.
Vomit.
It's clearly disgusting water, but he's like dehydrated, so he's got to drink.
I can't even think about it. Gross.
I've always been told, and I say always, meaning that I read it once in a book, that you're not supposed to sweat when you're in the desert because that's like how you dehydrate way faster. Let me tell you, Finn is the sweatiest guy on this movie. Like, he's so sweaty all the time.
I'm actually very curious where they shot this. I might be wrong because it might have just been The Mandalorian, but I think The Mandalorian is shot exclusively on sound stages. I don't know about this, if it's also exclusively shot on sound stages, but some of it might be, which is why he's sweating because they're not actually like on a location.
Well, no, I mean, the reason that I pointed out is
if you sweat, it means you're dehydrated.
You think that I'm criticizing the actor for sweating? No, I'm saying
not the actor, but like stop sweating.
No, I'm just saying like I think that's just another thing about him that's like he doesn't know anything other than being a stormtrooper. He doesn't even know these life survival skills that you're not supposed to overexert yourself in the desert. But you're hilarious. Thank you for telling me about the sound stages.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So anyway, so then we see that two sand people have gone up to Rey and they try to take BB-8, but she starts fighting them. And then Finn runs over to help, but she manages to knock them out on her own. And then BB is talking to Rey and she's like, who? And then she sees Finn and she starts running towards him furiously and he runs away. But then she gets around, she knocks him down and she's like, what's your hurry, thief? And he's like, what are you talking about? Then BB-8 comes over, starts zapping him and he's like, stop, what are you doing? And she's like, the jacket you're wearing was stolen from his master. And then Finn is like, oh, it was Poe's. he was captured by the First Order. I helped him escape, but then the ship crashed. He didn't survive. And then BB gets really sad. Every time BB gets sad, my heart breaks.
I know. He's such a cutie.
And then Finn is like, I'm sorry, I tried to help him. And then BB rolls away sadly. And then Rey is like, oh, so you're with the Resistance? And Finn is like, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, obviously I'm with yeah, for sure, 100% with the Resistance. I love the Resistance. Very resisty. And then she's like, oh, well, I've never met a Resistance fighter before. And he's like, well, this is what we look like. Actually, some of us look like this. Others, they look different.
I like that part. That was him again trying to be like, this is what humans do.
Super casual.
Yeah.
It was reminding me a little bit in such a different way, but just the funny acting of it was very similar to, I think it was episode 2 when Anakin sees Padme and he's like, oh, you're so beautiful. I mean, you've grown up, you're beautiful, sexy, what?
Yeah.
I didn't say
Except funnier. That was cringe. This was funny.
That was cringe. This was funny. But both of them did make me laugh, honestly.
Yeah.
So then she's like, oh, BB-8 says he's on a mission. He has to get back to your base. And then Finn, being the idiot he is like, oh yeah, he has a map to Luke Skywalker. Everyone's trying to get it.
Again, Poe tells Finn. Finn tells everyone who will listen to him. Everyone's going to find out.
Yeah. So then she's like, oh, Luke Skywalker, I thought he was a myth. And then BB-8 interrupts them because there are some stormtroopers that have made it into town. They see BB and they see Finn and they start shooting. And then Finn grabs her hand and starts running. And she's like, dude, don't grab my hand.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, I'm just trying to help. So I want to pause for a minute and talk about the relationship because you know me, very romance-minded.
Yes, of course.
Going into this movie, now I think we talked about it in the last episode of our podcast. I said that I read a romance novel that was supposedly a fan fiction between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Yeah.
And I'm upset, okay?
Why?
Because clearly Finn and Rey need to get together. But I hope that she's not going to get together with the bad guy, right? So that's why it's fan fiction, right? I don't know. These are the thoughts running through my head as it's happening because I'm like, I need her and Finn to hook up. That's what I need.
I wouldn't get too romance-minded for these films.
No, don't say that.
These are the least romantic of all of the films, I would say.
Okay, but they got sparks flying, okay? So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I felt the sparks. I felt like back on the Stormtrooper base, they watch a lot of rom-coms, and so that's why he grabbed her hand. Because he was like, this is what I've seen in all the rom-coms that I've watched. This is how you get the girl.
He's so romantic. Yeah. I love him. I'm rooting for him. I'm not rooting for Kylo Ren.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see a fan fiction between Rey and Finn. So somebody get to writing.
I'm sure it exists.
So anyway, then they run and hide in a tent and Rey's like, why are they shooting at both of us? And Finn is like, oh, because they saw you with me. And she's like, well, yeah, because you grabbed my hand, you idiot. She didn't say it like that, but she was like, thanks a lot. And then she crouches down and she asks BB-8 if he's okay, which again, I feel like just shows how much, almost, I don't want to say reverence, but she has a lot of respect for droids.
Yeah.
And then Finn shushes them and grabs her again to run. And she's like, stop grabbing my hand. But then they get blasted. And then Finn gets like knocked out for a second. She asks if he's okay. He says yes. And then she grabs his hand. And I'm like, they are in love. They're going to get together.
But she didn't grab it. She offered him her hand, which I like.
Okay.
I do think it was really good like relationship building of like these guys meeting and becoming
romance
friends building. And, lovers
they're
potentially,
They're in love. I'm already writing it in my mind. They're in love. They're amazing. I actually wrote, she grabs his hand. They're definitely going to bang. And then they run.
Oh my gosh. That's where they're going, actually.
That's what I figured. So then they're... Wait, this part was amazing. So they're running towards a ship, and then Finn is like, we need a pilot. And she's like, oh, we got one. We're going towards that ship.
Oh, this is the best part of the film. This is incredible.
Can I tell you that I knew what was going to happen, okay?
You knew?
Because he was like, what about this closer ship? And she's like, no, that one's garbage. And I literally wrote, what if that was the Falcon? That would be hilarious, LOL.
Yeah.
And then the ship that they're running towards gets blown up, and she's like, actually, the garbage one's fine. Let's go there. It is the Falcon. I am amazing. I know everything.
What an incredible moment. Especially calling it garbage, keeping with the theme of calling the Falcon garbage. Love it. Such a great moment.
Absolutely. And then I got really hyped because I was like, is Han Solo going to be on this ship? And it
like
turns
sleeping.
out we'll see him. Don't worry. But yeah, she's like, this ship hasn't flown in years. And he gets into like the, I guess, gun
area
situation. Yeah. And then she's in the pilot's seat. She's like, I can do this. He's like, I can do this. And I was like, they're going to bang. This is amazing.
They're so similar. similar.
We have so much in common. Unkar, that's the guy's name. The 1/4 portion. So this is the only point in my notes where I wrote his name, because he says, "Hey, that's mine," as they're flying away.
And it said his name.
Yeah. So then they're both struggling in this ship. They're flying through wreckage. They're trying to get away. There's these 2 fighters that are following them, and Finn is shooting at them. He shoots one of them down, and then the cannon gets stuck in one position, so he can't aim it. And he's like, "You gotta lose them." And she's like, "Okay, get ready." And he's like, for what? So then she does a little maneuvering, and she ends up lining up the cannon in a perfect way just so he has to just fire. He doesn't have to aim. And they kill, well, I don't know if they kill, I'm assuming they do, the second fighter.
Oh, that thing got destroyed. I think it's safe to say the pilot is dead.
Yeah. So then they leave the planet, and then the most romantic moment.
So cute. I love this moment when they're geeking out.
They're just gushing over each other. She's like, "I've never left the planet before. This is crazy." And he's like, "You set up the perfect shot." And they're like in love. I love them.
Yeah. So cute. I agree.
That's all I'm going to say. Actually, no, I'm going to say it again later because he says another line that I'm like, they're in love.
Oh, I know the line. I actually hate that line, but we'll get there.
I love it. So then BB interrupts, and Rey's like, "It's okay. He's with the resistance. We're going to get you home." And Finn is just looking terribly guilty. But then she turns to him and she's like, "I don't know your name." And he's like, "I'm Finn. What's your name?" And she's like, "I'm Rey." And then he seems like he's about to tell her the truth. And then something happens to the ship and they have to rush over to fix it. Then we cut really quick back to Kylo Ren. The soldier goes up to him, and it's definitely an interesting mirror of like a Darth Vader being told information that he doesn't like.
Like, oh, the messenger is going to get killed regardless of who he is.
Yeah, literally Star Wars is the epitome of don't shoot the messenger, but
yeah, they do shoot the messenger a lot.
The dark side does do that. Absolutely. So then he tells Kylo Ren that they weren't able to get the droid. It did fly off in a stolen Corellian YT model freighter.
Irrelevant to these movies, but Corellia is a planet.
That is irrelevant. And then Kylo's like, "The droid stole a freighter?" And the guy's like, "No, he had help from FN 2187. And then Kylo pulls out his lightsaber and starts throwing the most wild tantrum.
Oh my gosh. Which shows how different he is from Vader, because Vader had this like stoicism about him.
Absolutely.
But Kylo Ren is like unhinged, like fully unhinged.
He's immature, I would go as far as to say.
Yes.
He's very much ruled by his emotions. I actually thought in this section that his attitude reminded me a little bit of how Anakin kind of flies off the handle often.
That's
like
so
how
true.
Padme would be like, "What's wrong?" And he'd be like, "I hate everybody. I hate Obi. He's so mean to me." Like, that's what I was thinking when he was like destroying his own ship. Like, why are you doing that?
That is so true. It's so funny because Anakin and Vader are literally the same person, but
oh yeah,
I feel like they are so different from when he was Anakin and younger.
He became a totally different person.
And you're so right. Kylo Ren is like just like that.
So then he finishes his tantrum and he's like, "Anything else?" And then the guy's like, "Oh, there's a girl with them." And then Kylo grabs him and starts strangling him, and he's like, "What girl?" So she's obviously somebody important.
And then it cuts to Rey.
That's the girl. So she's trying to fix the ship, and BB-8 is not telling her where the resistance base is, and she's like trying to plead her case to Finn and being like, "You guys have to tell me where it is." And then Finn pulls BB aside and he's like, "Okay, so here's the sitch. I'm actually not in the resistance. I'm just trying to get away from the First Order." And BB is offended. Like, he's like, "WTF?" And then they have like a little back and forth. And then Rey's like, "Please just tell me where it is." And then BB-8 is looking back and forth between Finn and Rey. And then he tells her that they're in the Alenia system. And then Finn gives BB a thumbs up. And then BB gives him a thumbs up, but it's like a little flame.
That's cute.
I love it.
They're friends.
And then Rey is like, "Yeah, I'll drop you guys off, and then I gotta get back to Jakku." And he's like, "Why does everybody want to go to Jakku? That place sucks."
Yeah.
And then she's like asking him for a part that she needs to help fix the ship.
Oh, I love that. So funny.
This is my favorite part of the section.
That one.
She's like,
the one
"That
I'm pointing to.
That
the one I'm pointing to.
The one I'm pointing at." And then it finally takes BB pointing at it for him to be like, "Oh, here it is." That is literally me and Ryan in the kitchen. So
cute. That's why you like them so much, because they remind you of you and Ryan.
Yeah, maybe.
And Ryan lies the same way that Finn lies.
It's true. Oh my gosh. This is my relationship on screen. And then Finn is like, why are you going back to Jakku? You're a pilot. You can go anywhere. Is it because you have a family or a boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? I just want to know. Do you have a cute boyfriend?
See, that line I didn't like. I felt like it was a little too modern for me.
It's weird because for a second when he said, oh, you got a boyfriend, I was like, I love him. They're going to bang. But then he was like, a cute boyfriend. And I was like, wait, is he gay?
Are you interested in the cute boyfriend?
Yeah, why are you asking if he's cute? But no, I still maintain that they're in love.
Okay.
And then something else happens to the ship and they run back to the controls and they find that they're all locked and another ship is pulling them into their port, which they think is the First Order. Also, we get another hilarious shot of Finn trying to look like out the window and he uses Rey's head to pull himself up and she's like, get off of me, which they're in love.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I wrote that there's something about like physical touch. I just feel like has to be his love language. That's what I got from that is like now that he
wants love,
is in a position in his life where he has freedom and he could do whatever he wants. He's like exploring all of this and he just wants physical touch.
And also because she's pretty and he's in love with her.
It could be that too, maybe.
So then Finn is like, all right, we gotta get out of this situation. You were talking about poisonous gas. If you didn't fix the ship, can you unfix it? And we can release the poisonous gas. And so they're hiding under like the deck area and Rey's like, are you sure this is gonna work? And Finn says, yeah, the masks filter out smoke, not toxins. And then she gives him a look that makes it seem like it's weird that he knows that information. But I don't think it's weird that he should know that because I feel like if he's fought them before, he might just have had that information, you know?
Yeah, I don't feel like that little bit of information would give him away as a stormtrooper.
So then they hear somebody walking and guess who it is?
It's Han and Chewie!
It's Han and Chewie. And then Han says, Chewie, we're home.
We're home. How excited were you?
I screamed.
Did you know that they were in this movie? Well, obviously,
No.
I guess you would have because, well, like they mentioned Leia and Luke in the
but I
opening
wasn't,
crawl.
I didn't know. And actually, even at this point, I still don't know if we are going to see the, like, Luke, like Carrie Fisher and
Mark Hamill.
Like, I wasn't sure. I wasn't expecting to see any of the original cast.
Yeah,
So-
it's very exciting. It's very heartwarming. The nostalgia. Well, nostalgia for you like 3 months ago, but you know, you're a fan, so it still works.
Well, I was just imagining what it must have been like in the theater to have that reveal. If it was a secret, I don't know.
Well, see,
But-
that's why I find watching the trailer to kind of be a disservice to the film. The teaser trailer is pretty simple. It shows like a couple main characters, but then the last shot is of the Falcon.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm coming as a person who does not look up things before a film. I do not want to know who's involved. I don't want to know who's in it. I don't want to know plot points. So I don't know if it was revealed prior to this film that he was going to be in it. I'm not sure. It may have been, but I don't look that stuff up, so I don't know.
Well, anyway, I'm sure people were cheering regardless.
Yeah.
So then they pull up the grate and they see Rey and Finn, and Han is like, where's everyone? And Rey's like, oh, we're the only ones on the ship. I'm the pilot. And I'm like, why didn't they think that Han Solo was evil? Like, just some random guy is like, where is everybody?
Oh, yeah.
And they're
all
just
of a
like,
sudden.
oh, I'm the pilot. Yeah, like, you wouldn't be concerned that this is an evil guy? I don't know.
That's true.
But then he's like, where'd you get the ship? And Rey says, Jakku. And Han is like, that junkyard. And Finn is like, see, Jakku does suck. Don't go back there. And then she explains how the ship got there. It was just like a whole list of somebody stole from somebody, who stole from somebody, who stole from somebody. And then Han's like, well, I'm stealing the Millennium Falcon back. And then Rey's like, you're Han Solo? And he's like, I used to be. And then he walks away. And Finn is like, the war hero? And she's like, no, the smuggler. And then they like go back and forth. And Chewie's like, I don't know. I guess he was a war hero.
Also, there was like a brief little shot of Han entering the cockpit like alone and just sort of like looking around, and it made me cry.
You cried?
I did. There's just something about
Leah.
Han in the cockpit of the Falcon that made me emotional.
I'm disappointed in you. Well, add it to the tally. That's 2 cries for you.
Actually, I think I cried one more time, but I don't remember where it was.
Somebody tell us in the comments. Oh, by the way, we're also on YouTube. So if you don't use Twitter, you can just comment on the YouTube video.
It's actually brand new, and that is a great way to connect with the community.
There you go. And then Han tells Chewie to put Rey and Finn in a pod, and they'll drop them off at the next inhabited planet, which I don't know why it was like, drop them off at the nearest McDonald's.
Yeah.
And then Rey's like, no, we got to get to the resistance base. We have this BB droid that needs to get there. And Finn is like, yeah, the droid has a map to Luke Skywalker, which stop telling everybody.
Again, stop telling everybody that.
And then Han stops in his tracks, and Finn is like, you're the Han Solo that fought with the rebellion. You knew him. And Han is like, yeah, I knew Luke.
I love all the foreshadowing of like, what did we miss in these 30 years? What happened?
Seriously,
where did
let's
Luke
get
go?
another trilogy. So anyway, then they hear a thud, and Han is like, oh man, I hope one of those Rathars didn't get out. And Finn is like, what? You're hauling Rathars? And he's like, oh yeah, oops. It looks like the Guavian Death Gang is here. They must have tracked us from Nantoon, which I don't know what any of that means, but I wrote it down just for fun.
Unimportant, yeah.
And then Rey's like, what's a Rathar? And Han is like, oh, they're just like these big, dangerous things. They end up looking like little squid guys. Giant squid guys, I shouldn't say little.
Big old squids.
And he says he has 3 on board. And Han tells them to hide. And he's like, don't think about taking the Falcon. And then Rey's like, what about BB-8? And Han is like, oh, I'm just going to use him for this situation. Then I'll give him back. Which, why? Why didn't you hide him?
Literally, why does Han need BB-8? For plot. That's why he needs BB-8. There's literally no reason why he would be like, random droid, come on with me.
Yeah. Why didn't he hide him? It makes no sense.
No.
So
dumb.
Then I wrote that this guy who came aboard, whose name is Balatik, I wrote, this guy looks exactly like Arya from Game of Thrones.
What? I don't see it.
Think about it. Think about it.
If we see him again, I'll look at him closer. Maybe, kind of. The eyes are kind of there.
There you go. I'm telling you.
They're kind of there.
So anyway, he's like, Han Solo, you're a dead man. And then Han starts arguing with him, and Rey and Finn are sneaking around underneath them in like the grates. And then some people come from the other side, and the leader of that, his name is Tasu Leech. And those guys are like, it's over for you, Han. And then Han's like, guys, don't worry. Both of you are going to get what you were promised. And then Balatik is like, there's no one left in the galaxy for you to swindle. And then he notices BB-8, because why wouldn't he? Random droid just sitting next to him.
Hanging
and he's
there.
like, the First Order is looking for a droid just like that, and 2 fugitives. And then
dun dun dun.
Yeah. And then Finn and Rey stop in their tracks because they're eavesdropping on the conversation. And then the Tasu Leech people, they start to search the freighter, and Rey and Finn are like, we got to trap the gangs. And then she's like, oh, I'll just reset the fuses. So she does, but then it opens up 3 cages, and we see these tentacles coming out. And Han says, with his classic line, I guess, they had to bring it back for fan service.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
So awful.
Yeah, not a good line.
And then Rey's like, oh no, wrong fuses. And then Balatik says, kill him and take the droid. And then a Rathar jumps out on either side and starts killing both gangs. And then Han and Chewie and BB start running. Obviously, there's a third one too. Rey and Finn get out of the pipes or wherever they are. And Rey's like, well, what do these guys look like? And then they see somebody getting eaten by one of the Rathars. And Finn is like, oh, they look like that. And she is horrified, and he pulls her away. At this point, they're just touching all the time because they're in love, which is fine with me. And then a Rathar grabs Finn, and she starts chasing after him. And I wrote, what are the odds that this Rathar, who's just eating people nonstop,
is not eating this guy?
Is like, I'm not gonna eat this guy. I want to bring him somewhere else first. Why?
His love language is also touch, and he felt it from Finn, and he was like, we can spend some time together. Yeah.
So then Rey runs back to this like control center thing, and she sees on camera that the Rathar is dragging Finn, and then she closes one of the portal door thingies on it, so it slices off his tentacles that are holding Finn. And then she runs up to grab him, and he's like, the Rathar had me, but then the door closed. And Rey's like, whoa, that was lucky, which I loved that she didn't take credit for it.
Humble queen.
Yeah. So then they keep on running, and then everybody gets to the Falcon, and then Rey, there's like a back and forth. I didn't write it down. I'm not sure if you did, but Rey jumps into the co-pilot seat, and Han is annoyed with her for doing that.
So Chewie did get shot. So Rey steps up and she says, you need a co-pilot. I've got a co-pilot. Well, he's, screaming in the back right now, so you need me. And then Han is basically trying to start the ship. It's not working. And Rey realizes he didn't click like a specific button. So she's just kind of showing off her knowledge of flying.
She's so skilled.
And I do think he's impressed with her.
Yeah. No, they definitely like grudgingly accept each other's position in this situation, I think. Yeah. So then they manage to get away. They fly off, and then we see Balatik, and he speaks to like a walkie-talkie thing, and he says, inform the First Order that Han Solo has the droid they want, and it's aboard the Millennium Falcon.
Ooh.
And that's that's the end of the section.
Great section.
Great section. Great film. Really enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
I feel like there's definitely a little bit of like fan service going on. However, I am a fan and I shouldn't say that I want to be serviced.
But we want to be serviced, and we are. The one thing I will say, I mean, I think this is any sort of franchise that gets rebooted after all this time. You have to add some of that nostalgia factor in. Like, I just think it's important for the older fans to get serviced.
And I was feeling so much nostalgia and thinking, remember last month when I was watching these movies the first time?
It's really great. I love it. There's also a lot of musical cues in the nostalgia as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You know I never pick up on the music.
You did with the Darth Vader theme in the last film.
That's true. So let's talk. Because
talk.
there are a few things. One, I want to give my predictions. Two, I want to talk about Adam Driver. And
Me too.
Three, I want to talk about how much in love Finn and Rey are.
Perfect. Let's start with Adam Driver. I will answer your question of my level of attractedness to him. It's pretty high, I would say. I think he is so sexy.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen a movie with him in it. However, I know, did he get famous because of this trilogy?
He was in another HBO show, which I'm literally not even going to say the name because I think it's a terrible show and I do not like the writer, but he was in it. And I only watched the show for however many terrible seasons it had because he was in it. Because I thought he was so captivating on screen. And that's what I think it is with him, is like if he was just like some schmuck walking down the street, I'd be like, that's a goofy looking tall guy. But because his acting persona is so, I don't know, captivating is the best word I can think of. I think he really just like lights up a screen and he's just so interesting to watch.
So that's actually exactly what I wanted to bring up because I was going to say, I have never seen him in anything before.
Well, I have. My old roommate is literally #1 of his fan club. And so she would always be like, there's this incredible movie, we have to watch it. And then I'll be like, so Adam Driver's in it? And she's like, no, but that's not why it's great. So like literally every time we'd have a movie night, it was like Adam Driver, which I don't mind because I like Adam Driver.
Okay.
He was in some bad movies though.
Well, my point being here that it seems like so many people say that he's a very attractive guy. And I, just looking at pictures of him, I'm like, this guy is not an attractive guy. So I was actually specifically going to ask you about him because I was wondering, he must be so incredibly charismatic on screen that people just fall in love with him. So
he is.
Having not seen him in this movie yet, I am going to say, I would go so far as to say I find him physically unattractive. By the end of the movie, who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind.
We'll see. Yeah, for me, I really think he's one of those people that's like their personality makes them more attractive. But I'm also weirdly attracted to
bad guys.
Well, yes, to bad guys, but also to features that are not traditionally attractive. Like I really like people with larger noses, and he has a large nose.
I actually do. This is just getting into like us just talking without the podcast.
Dating with Kelli and Leah, our new segment.
I happen to also prefer a bigger nose on guys.
Yeah.
I think it makes them more distinctive and interesting looking.
Yeah.
But that's not, I don't know, like there's something about like, I feel like the only pictures I think I've ever seen him, he looks like, you know, when you're in like 6th grade and the boys in class start going through puberty and they get like a little bit of facial hair and they're not ready to shave it off yet. That's what he looks like to me.
Oh my gosh, that's an incredible description.
So that's the problem. I actually happen to love the big nose because I prefer a big nose too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the facial hair, not doing it for me. It's bad.
I think he's clean shaven.
Thank goodness. So maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe I'll find him.
I'm excited to see your thoughts on him when we
Subject number 2, which I guess we can combine the love between Finn and Rey and my predictions because prediction number 1, they are going to get married.
Okay, that's a prediction.
That's my prediction. They're going to fall in love. I love them. They're amazing. They're going to be together. They're going to have so many babies. It's going to be
After this,
amazing.
Kelli is going to release an entire 10-book fan fiction series about Star Wars. Everyone get ready. You heard it here first.
Yeah, 100%. For sure going to happen.
It's going to be real sexy.
But yeah, I actually don't really know where to go with predictions because I'm not even like 100% sure what's going to happen in this trilogy. But I guess we're going to see Luke. I think we're going to see Leia. I think it's going to be an amazing reunion of love. And maybe someone's going to die, but I hope it's not anybody that I know. Some random guy's going to die. I don't know.
Hope it's just some random person. And what are your thoughts on Kylo Ren and who he is?
He's the kid of somebody important. That's what I think. I think that maybe he's Leia's kid, maybe he's Luke's kid. He's one of their kids.
And he kind of just had like a fall to darkness, sort of the same way that Anakin did.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I think. Because everyone's like, you can't hide from your family. Yeah, because your family is a bunch of Jedi. That's what it is.
But if his family is a bunch of Jedi, then that means that Darth Vader is probably his family too.
And I also think that Rey's family has got to be somebody important too, because she's just been waiting for people for years. I don't know. And like, it doesn't make as much sense now, but originally I thought she was on Tatooine. And when she was like, oh, like I'm waiting for my family, I was like, is she related to maybe the Lars family or something?
Yeah, as a fan, I didn't really love that they chose Jakku as the location because it was a desert planet. Like, it looks just like Tatooine. It's just bound to confuse people. So, like, why even do that?
But other than that, I don't have many predictions. So I guess we'll just find out what happens next week.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Very eager to get into it and see the blossoming romance.
Well, as I said, don't get too excited. The least romantic of the trilogies.
Boo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next week for part 2 of episode 7. The Force is waking up slowly.
Yep. Force is still waking up. See you guys next week.
Bye.
You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelly. Make sure to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also follow us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.